Welcome yet again to another episode. And today we are talking about tithing. Tithing. Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about tithing. So, what about tithing? Well, I think the topic has gotten a little bit of a boost of somewhat in the last couple of months after Creflo Dollar came out saying that everything that he taught about tithing was technically wrong, which was really, for people like me who's been saying the same thing for like the past 10 years, it was really refreshing to see some a big person in the faith who has a lot of influence come out and actually speak on this topic and how it's not biblical at best under Christianity or under the covenant of Jesus, right? So, how I can break it down, I do not want to isolate people who already tithe, but the best way I can say this is this, right? So, most people in Christianity or in the church today, they confuse tithing and offering. They amalgamate the two things and make it into one thing. You know, like when the pastor comes out and you'll say, "Okay, it's time for tithe and offering message," you know, and then basically gives you a verse that speaks about you need to pay money, right? And this has been a tradition that's been going on for a long time. So I'm sure most of you Christians out there who are watching this, you already know what I'm talking about. But if you really look into the Bible, right, you'll start to see some different conversations when it comes to tithing and offering. Today, we won't touch on the topic of offering, but I will just blanket it at the end. But we're going to speak more on tithing. So, tithing is an interesting one. The first place of mention is Genesis 14, verse 20, right, where it says, "And praise be to the Most High God, to God the Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Right? This is Melchizedek speaking to Abraham after he had just defeated the four kings, right? And brought some stuff back from the kings to. Basically, it's a long story. Four kings go to war with the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, and in the process, while they go to war, they take Lot and his family. Abraham hears wind of it. He takes four of his, I want to say, covenant buddies, right? And then they go after them. They come back, obviously, after having won. And then Melchizedek speaks to them and he says this, "And praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Then Abraham, he wasn't Abraham at the time, Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. So, if you look in certain translations, it'll say he gave him a tithe of all, or some will say he gave him a tenth. So the conversation there gets like a little bit interesting. That's where most people will say, "Oh, okay, so tithing is a tenth." Not necessarily. If we look at tithing under the Mosaic covenant, which was under Moses, we find out that actually these guys actually paid more than a tenth. The maths is very interesting if you like to look at strings of where something is, you know, like if you like that stuff, then it's a very good deep dive to actually see, wait a minute, these guys didn't pay a tenth, they paid up to like 33%, and this was frequent. So you start to see how the definition of a tithe changed. And then fast forward, when it came to the church, people started saying, okay, so a tithe is a tenth of your salary every single month, which technically, the Bible doesn't say that. Remember, we said under the Moses covenant, it says 33%. And then, if we look at the Abraham story, which some Christians who are for the tithe will use, we find out actually that Abraham did not tithe his salary. He tithed the spoils that he got, and those spoils were not his spoils. They were technically he returned them to the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. So basically, Abram tithed something else that was not even his. So, how most Christian churches link that together with tithing your salary is basically an amalgamation of Abraham, the 10th, and then whatever is in the Mosaic covenant, first fruits, that's what they call them, right? Which is part of it. It's not the whole thing. But they take that, put those things together, and then they put it in a neat little bow, and they say, hey, this is now what the church is meant to do. We're meant to tithe. But that sounds like a really man-made tradition, which I don't know about you. I'm not open to following stuff that doesn't benefit me in the long run. So that's the biggest or the best breakdown of how I can explain how we got to this place where we speak of the tithe being 10% and it being every month of your salary. But technically, under Abraham, it wasn't that. It was basically just a tenth of what he felt on his heart after he got the blessing from. Remember, he got a word blessing from Melchizedek, and in that response, probably he was very happy. He was very excited, and basically, what he did was he gave a tithe of whatever he recovered. And the rest he gave back to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And then you start to think, wait a minute, what about the conversation of, a tithe cleanses your pay, it cleanses your salary. But when you start to see this, you start to see that actually Abraham paid 90% to Sodom and Gomorrah, and a lot of Christians will associate that as like demonic, right? And then he paid a tenth to quote unquote God, right? And so what are we saying? Are we saying that you do your maths? It technically doesn't add up when you think of it that way. This is how I would break down today when it comes to tithing, what it should look like. Tithing shouldn't actually be something that we practice today, but I would say yes, offering. If you wanna offer or give something, absolutely, but it should not be coerced. That's the key. It should not be under some law that a pastor will tell you. It should not be under the same conversation of curses and blessings. No, those two things should not even come when it comes to offering. If a pastor comes on to the pulpit and says, hey guys, we have a really big building and we need to pay the lights, we need to keep the water running, please can you help us with anything that you have? That's amazing. That's noble. And if your heart feels like, this is something that I need to do, then do it. But do not let people tell you that if you don't give, then the devourer is coming and taking away your stuff. That is so far from the truth. We do not operate on Malachi 3 verse 8, I think, We don't operate on that. If you look at the context of that verse, it was speaking in context of the Mosaic covenant. It was a law that had to be adhered to. They had to give. They had to tithe, because let's remember, Israel under the Moses covenant was under something that we know to be a theocracy. You know how most countries today live under a democracy? Well, they lived under a theocracy. So God was the president, the priesthood was the government, and basically taxes and tithe was just the same thing. So that's why it was a law that you need to pay that. And just like how today, I, as an individual who stays in South Africa, I need to pay taxes to the South African government. It is a must. If I don't, then it's a problem. So you need to understand this in the breakdown of what it looks like today. And I hope this brought some healing into you. I hope this gave you some understanding of how the tithe works, its history, and it's a very fascinating topic, especially when you're reading the laws. I would highly recommend you guys to read Deuteronomy 14:22 to 29. Very interesting stuff on what they actually did with the tithe under the Mosaic covenant. They literally went and had a party. That's what they did with that 10%. So yeah, it's a very exciting conversation, but it also has the dark side of hurt, where people are told to put money even though they don't have, and if they don't, they feel guilty. If they don't, they feel like they're not gonna get blessed, or they're not gonna move forward financially. God is not on their side, which is so far from the truth. God is always on your side, financially or otherwise. He's always on your side. And I hope this message helped you to rethink this whole tithing conversation. Cool. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment below if you agree or disagree, or just comment and say, hey, like it. Hey, hi, how you doing? Yeah, just let me know. And yeah, peace.